experience all that.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah,
Ladies first.
and we'll open up for some questions near the end. I just want to say, not Wolverine related, but I just love you guys' work. I love Longshot. Dazzler's my favorite X-Men. I named my daughter Allison Blair.
Whoa!
Yes,
She'll be happy.
yeah. And just everything you've done, just amazing. Kid Eternity, just everything, just perfect.
Thank you.
But let's talk Wolverine.
Let's talk
We have
Wolverine.
Wolverine's foster father right here.
Yeah. Can you hear us?
Yeah.
You want to test your mic? Well, you guys, I know that you just want to talk to Chris about everything. So, you know, I didn't prepare at all, but when we were sitting here, the first Wolverine story that popped in my mind is that one, I'm putting Chris to sleep. Let's see if I say something controversial, we'll wake him up. The Barry Windsor Smith story with the little girl and Wolverine. Oh my God. That's one of my favorites. You guys know that story? No. You want to talk about that story? Just start talking.
So Ann and Barry Windsor Smith and I are eating at the restaurant just down the street from Marvel. And, you know, we're sitting there, figure this is X-Men 198. And she says, this has nothing to do with Wolverine. And she says to me, oh, by the way, Jim's resurrecting Jean Grey. And I jumped up and I said, excuse me, ran back the 2 blocks to the office, but it was Friday and they locked all the doors and Jim had gone home early. So, Ann and Barry and I have a long history.
How long is it?
I'm sorry, what? I honestly can't remember what we were doing with that story.
Well, what's interesting, you know, when you meet fans today, they always say Wolverine, oh, the Adam, Dantian, however you say, Bones, but didn't he not have that until you and Barry?
No, he always had it.
He always had it. But what was the story where they gutted it? That was a Barry story.
See, Barry and I were doing this arc with Aurora, following her around the world. And it was X-Men 186, 198, and then there was another one that was going to come like just past the aughts. And instead he did these 30 pages of origin of how Wolverine got his claws. And Jim saw that and basically said, one to that. And so Barry did this, Wolverine, and we said, but Barry, you're supposed to do this story with us. And Barry said, no.
Yeah, Barry did what he wanted.
And then, so I did all the stuff I was going to do in the story with Barry. I did it with John Jr. And Barry did all the stuff that he wanted to do for the story in this creator-owned thing of his own. So Barry is sort of like the best of times and the worst of times. And every so often they intersect. And yes, the story with Wolverine and, was this Katie?
It was Katie, yeah.
I mean, Katie had the advantage of being one of the few people in the Marvel Universe who was shorter than he was. But, because she was like 6.
Yeah, she. Well, what is Wolverine's what? 5 foot?
He's 5'1".
5'1"? Yeah.
Or as I keep telling people, if you look at Hugh Jackman and you look at Halle Berry, the size relationship is actually quite accurate. He's 6'4", and Halle Berry isn't. And in terms of comics, it's the reverse. Aurora's like 6'4", and Logan isn't. But as the postscript to this is, it's Hugh Jackman and Halle Berry. So who gives a darn? But the thing about this story was, you spend the first chunk of pages with with Deathstrike selling her soul to Spyro. I mean, again, it's Ann creates Mojo, and she creates Spyro. Well, she and Arthur. And it's like Chris being the greediest SOB in the comic book universe. I take one look at them and I say, can I borrow these characters? And you know, if you need some time to keep Longshot in the public eye until you and Arthur get ready to do Longshot 2, I'll take care of them. I won't do anything stupid because, okay, Longshot's going to hang out with Dazzler, but everyone knows that's a dude relationship. Nothing to do with Longshot. It's just Dazzler is just. And when you're ready, when you two guys are ready to go, I'll give them back. And you never got ready.
Well, you know what happened there is that Arthur and I came up with a whole graphic novel. He laid out the whole graphic novel.
Really?
It is stunning. It looks like almost Alex Toth. It's very, and he still has this book. And I kept saying, why don't we just do it with this Alex Toth style? Because Arthur's layouts are simple, graphic, gorgeous. And he's like, basically, he pulled a Dolly Parton. You know, I remember Dolly Parton was once on Letterman, and David Letterman was like, what? You know, this is kind of a down low show. What do you come and dress like that for? You know, because she was in her spangles and her, you know, and she went, Dave, my fans expect Dolly. And Arthur said the same thing to me. He was like, I can't just do the layouts as an Alex Toth style graphic novel. My fans expect the detail. So that.
But the response should have been, aren't we your fans too?
But I really think Arthur, because he became known for someone who gave you these ornate portraits. That was his thing. He loved doing it. We're all allowed to do whatever we want, so he decided to do that. And what happens with a lot of artists is that once they become famous from working with Chris and doing the X-Men, they realize, wow, I can just do posters and covers the rest of my life, you know? And so the art of the story becomes less important for some artists, and then they never go back. Bill Sienkiewicz the same way.
But we did lure him back for a couple. Oh.
Did he do an interior?
Yeah, we did New
Oh.
Mutants.
Oh no, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
After New Mutants.
No. We did a New Mutants 2 years ago, which was the next issue. The joke being it only took us 36 and a half years to get to it. And Bill drew the first, he was terrified because he hadn't done a series issue in, 34 and a half years. Well, he'd done 3 pages of framing sequence for a New Mutants, a little New Mutants special, 3-part special by me, where it's Danny and Hela have a discussion, and Hela makes Danny an offer that Danny doesn't refuse, and we get to the end, and it's, you know, I of course wrote too many words, and they covered up all of Bill's art, so I threw them all out. And then he finished the book with this brilliant shot of Danny jumping on Moonstar and riding away. I suddenly looking at it going, should I tell him he forgot the wings? Nah. But then he did the New Mutants, and he was terrified that he wouldn't be able to tell a story. Leaving aside the fact that I'm writing a full script because this is Marvel of the present day. But with each page he got into it, he was having more and more fun, and we did it. So, let's see, this is 24. So in, I guess, the spring of '66, we'll do it again. So write a note on your dashboards. It's just storytelling. I mean, I would write stories for Ann, and they would be plots. I would write the Wolverines for Ann, and they would be plots, because the idea is, yes, I will break a story down into pages, but I'm not Arthur, I'm not Walter, I'm not Bill. I can break down a story. I'm not Barry, for God's sakes. But they have better ideas. Actually,
Especially with fight scenes. But I mean,
Well,
to give you a little context and history is that, you know, Marvel used to do plot style. So, and that came from the very early days of Stan Lee writing too much and being too busy and just throwing like one-liners. Here, Jack Kirby, you know, here's a few lines, do it. And then by the time Chris came to Marvel, I came in the 80s, maybe 10 years after you or something.
I walked in the door, well, as a gopher, I walked in '69.
Oh.
But officially I got started around '73, '74. And, you know, when you're working with Jack Kirby, when you're working with Ditko, just flick them in the right direction. But just the flip side of that is, with Kirby, if anyone here has read New Gods, you start with the first issue and you think, wow, there are 12 brilliant concepts here. And then you get to the second issue and you go, huh, there are 6 more good concepts here, plus the 12 last issue. Wow. Then you get to the third issue, like, another 8 new concepts. And Jack, because that's the way his mind works, he just exploded with concepts that Disney's been living off of for the last 40, 50, you know, very long time. What Stan brought to the table is, he's the editor. And he just, okay, this one, this one, this one. And the others all get set aside for down the road. And after a while, Jack got pissed off because Stan's throwing away my stuff. He hates me, you know? And that's what I would do is I'd write, when I'm writing, I write what's happening, but I also write dialogue. I also write emotional representations. I also write descriptions of where they are. I'm trying to give the artist every conceivable element of concept. So if I'm writing Wolverine, this is how he feels. And an artist went in and was complaining to Walter Simon and said, how do I deal with this? And Walter said quite simply, you realize there's only like 4 or 5 physical images here. The rest of it's all stuff. The word begins with B. That's for him as much as you. Just deal with the physical descriptive elements, you'll have a great time. But that was when you had artists who could actually understand this concept.
I think it was also pre-internet. We all used to go to lunch a lot, you know, and I was Louise Simonson's assistant working, and I just watched Wheezy. Chris would have a billion ideas. He had the notepads. He had these notepads, and he was doing these charts and this like multi-epic, and then they're gonna go to hell, and then she's all this kind of stuff. And I watched Wheezy, and she would just be quiet, and then she would light up for the good ones. And I went, oh, so that's how you do it. You go to lunch, you let Chris talk, and then you just kind of light up when he has a great idea. And but now you don't meet your editors. You don't go to lunch with them. You don't have these conversations where you figure out like the essence of a character, or with a team book. I specifically remember Chris loving writing the female characters and loving strong female characters, and every once in a while I'd go, why is Colossus and Cyclops so boring? And it was because
They're guys.
He was their guys, and he wasn't giving them much to do, you know? And you think, wow, we gotta do something with the guys, you know?
Okay.
You know, so but the Marvel method of the plot, you were always putting all the dialogue in 2, and all the feeling, as Chris was saying, so that the artist would be able to pick and choose also. So you have a flexible script, a flexible narrative, therefore it's very collaborative. And now artists get full scripts and they feel locked in.
Well, some like it and some don't.
Yeah, some like it and some don't. Some will be like, just draw exactly what's there. I always write at the top of a script, I said, this is a flexible plot. This is a flexible full script. Add panels, combine panels, shoot me ideas, do whatever the hell you want. Tell the story however you want, and I rewrite it to fit what you do. Sometimes the artist goes nuts. David Aha, famously, we did the seeds together. He threw the whole plot up in the air, and it's all there, but he just like did a jigsaw puzzle that was different from the jigsaw puzzle. You know, so it's really about method too.
It's synergy.
Yeah, it's synergy, and it's like, it's that thing, the guys that used to do the Exquisite Corpses, remember that? Where you'd fold a piece of paper, pass it around, and everyone would add a bit of drawing to it, and it would somehow all work, because if you were in sync, you'd create something. But now it doesn't work like that, because
It's much more structured, and you're playing to a field where all the buildings have been laid out. You don't have the opportunity of creating something new. And again, it's like with Arthur, with Arthur and Mojo, you just have this wackadoo concept of anything goes. And, you know, I shrunk my own head, I tied Ann to the front of a boat.
yeah.
You know, it's just like, if it looks stupid, we'll get rid of it, but if it doesn't look stupid, let's go. You know, I had, you know, baby Wolverine with this, not baby, like 5-year-old Wolverine with 5-year-old claws, and I dropped a really big villain on top of him, and, well,
Well,
you
you
know.
remember how when you first came up with the X-Babies,
Mhm.
the Office, like all the other editors, some of them are here, Ralph Macchio, and Bruno, Mike Carlo, all these, they were laughing. They were just like, what are you doing? X-Babies? It's like, what are you doing to Marvel? And now X-Babies, you know, now everybody's a baby now.
Well,
They sell those little baby dolls, right? Little big-headed baby dolls.
oh, they keep coming out now, and the whatever, the big-headed,
Yeah.
Or probably get up to, what's it face, number 9,316. But here's a lot of how it works. So Dave Cockrum and I are sitting there. We're now like 3 issues into our collaboration on the X-Men. We have no effing idea what the hell's going on. It's like, we have to do something cool for issue 100. Okay, what? I don't know. What do you want to do? So,
You guys have no idea how lost, when you're plotting Chris was always writing multiple books and multiple epics, and sometimes you have those moments where you're like, I don't know what to do next.
so I'm sitting there, and Dave walks in, because we had no idea who Wolverine was. It's like, he shows up in the Hulk, and he beats up Hulk, and it's like, I would think, this is the dumbest ass thing I've ever seen. This guy, like, wow, Wolverine, big deal. It's like, okay. You know, you sure we have to kill off Thunderbird? I mean, an indigenous person is so much more interesting than this other wanker. But Len created him, so Len, you know, he wrote the giant size, so there you go. So I've already killed off one X-Men, and it's like, okay, what do we do now? And Dave Cockrum walks in, and Dave used to draw ideas on the back of every page. He once drew this spectacular shot of Aurora and Kurt, Nightcrawler and Storm, sitting next to each other under a tree, in costume, it was the most beautiful romantic shot ever. And they're proofing the book. Oh, we have to move this caption. Okay, we'll just move the panel. Well, now the beautiful shot has this, they cut out the panel, they moved it, they put it back, thereby taking much of the centerpiece out of Dave's picture on the back. The description of the people responsible for this begins with an A and ends with a hole. But anyway, so he comes in one day and he's got a sketch. And bearing in mind, the original concept for Wolverine is, and that's why the housings are on the back of his gloves. The claws are in the housing. So, like Iron Man, anybody could put on the gloves and become functional Wolverine. As you may or may not know from Marvel history, a suit of armor can be worn by anyone, good, bad, or evil. Not such a saleable concept as, oh, I've been bitten by a radioactive spider, woohoo! So you have a hand like this, and the 3 claws come out of the back of the hand. And I look at this and I go, that's the most disgusting thing I've ever seen. That is so cool. And bingo, there we go. That's Wolverine. This is why, when you're working with an artist, the other difference between then and now is Dave and I were on the book from 94, well, 95 technically, to 107, 108. Doesn't seem like a lot, but these were the foundational issues of the X-Men. John Byrne comes in with 109 or 107, and he and I are together through 136. So that's like 3 years. You work with someone, you build up a rapport, you build up an awareness of who and what they are, and you're off and running. Nowadays, no one works together for that long. Nowadays, you don't talk with anyone for that long. You try to talk with someone, you get all sorts of Kupfergeflugen from the editor. But just by having that exchange, by seeing what Dave drew, by understanding it's meant for, and if anyone saw X-Men the movie, where Rogue looks at Hugh Jackman and says, "Does it hurt?" And he looks at her, looks at his hand, looks at the front, looks at her again, looks at the front, and says, "Every time." And there we are at the premiere, and this writer suddenly jumps up and goes, "Yes!" My wife says, "Sit the fuck down before you make another fool of yourself." Because that's the line. That's the moment. That defines Wolverine for the next 15 movies, because that's what it's all about. That's, that is the essence of who he is that you move on to. Of course, the next 3 questions are, where'd the adamantium come from? And should we bother about it? My attitude was no. Leave it in the past, leave it out of sight of the readers for as long as you can get away with it, because the more you tell the readers, like, oh, I'm from Canada, and my real name is Howlett. Okay. The less interesting a character becomes. It's for me anyway.
In his history, who came up with the snake? You did? Did you patent it?
It was the 70s. What's a patent?
And now I also wonder, he can't have a cigar anymore, can he?
No. Oh no.
Yeah.
But at least they're not taking them out of
Yes.
the hardcover reprints. Wolverine smokes.
Yeah.
Leaving aside the idea of, yes, but smoke is as dangerous to a collateral extent as it is to the person who's puffing on it.
Unless you have the healing factor.
Well, there is that. But, so we did a scene, John Jr. and I did a scene where Kitty plucks the cigar out of his mouth, takes a puff, and then, thanks to Tom Orzechowski's brilliant balloon, sound effects, spends the next panel and a half just coughing her lungs out and telling him, I can't do this ever again. Well, you don't have a healing factor. I do. End of story. But that's what you can do. You can make little comments. You can use all of the creative elements that go into a panel to bring that moment to life. That's what makes comics fun. It's a collaboration, not simply of writer and penciler, but inker, letterer, and colorist. And therefore, you go reach out to the reader and say, hey, this guy's cool, or this gal's cool. Want to play? And yes, Ann makes. Why did I create women? Because in real life, I knew I had my best friend worked for NPR, and I've heard her broadcast from places where you can actually hear the bullets go by. A dear friend of mine is a Pulitzer Humboldt winner and used to dash off to places in Africa with a mop suit. At the slightest report of Ebola, I knew people who were brave in real life, so I figured, okay, if they're brave in real life, they deserve to have superheroes following their lead. And quite frankly, I was tired of everybody in comics being a girl. It's like, it's not Spider-Boy, it's Spider-Man. Well, if you've got a Spider-Man, can't you have, and why even be gender specific at all? Phoenix, okay, you know who she is. So, it's...
Should we ask questions? Does anybody have a Wolverine question?
Or not.
Okay. The girl in the front.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, I was wondering, are y'all excited about, Deadpool and Wolverine working together with this movie coming out?
I mean, I don't know much about Deadpool, but I assume it's maybe going to be about Deadpool trying to get Wolverine's coat and failing.
Well, I saw the trailer.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. He's recruited by the Time Variant Authority. So maybe or maybe not, there's a cameo by Loki. Who knows? All I know is they don't introduce the guy with the claws until the very last scene of the trailer, and that only as a long shot view of the back, and then a shadow view of the claws coming out while Deadpool's over there screaming for mercy. All I know is I wrote a note to Hugh. He was on Broadway, and said, I don't care what the hell the story is, just so you kick his ass. And he said, well, we're supposed to give away gifts for the first day of shooting, so can you send me a card of that, and I'll give it to Ryan? I went, okay, so I lettered up a big card saying, I don't care what Ryan Reynolds does. All I want is for you to kick his ass. So, your guess is as good as mine in knowing May. I mean, in July?
July 26th.
He's got an inside line.
I don't know. I mean, I would not feel bad if it made $900 million. God knows the mouse could use it. I do know that there's a buzz online that Hugh Jackman said he would love to do the next Avengers, or he would be interested in doing the next Avengers, provided he gets to meet Tom Holland, current Spidey.
Yeah.
Oh yes, and RDJ, who just won an Oscar. I thought, now that would be interesting. But Disney's got a lot of money, and I'm sure Robert Downey wouldn't say no to however many zeros they offer him. But that we'll find out at some point in the future. Just please God, don't let the movie not be a ridiculously huge success.
Another question? Go ahead, the guy.
I was wondering, as the series went on, you and other writers made Wolverine a mentor character, and I'm wondering how you balance someone who's such a rough, pain in the ass instigator to also somebody who rises up and helps the next generation of heroes get going. How you and other writers found that balance eventually with Wolverine.
Other writers?
There are no other writers. But it is a good question.
Well, the reason he became a mentor for Kitty is because she got kidnapped to Japan and enslaved by Ogun, and he had to go save her. In the process, she almost got turned into an evil character, and he almost got killed. She almost killed him. So it's not that he was saving her as a good guy. He was bonding with her because if he didn't, she would become what the Ogun and the Hand wanted her to become, which was a personification of evil. The only real kid that he was kind to is Katie Power, because she's a kid, and you know, even all adult predators tend to bond with youngsters. What he did to Jubilee, there are two scenes, I think, in the story as it goes along, that his enlisting her to be his savior, he knows from the very beginning that he's destroying her life. He is turning her into something that she will think at this point is really cool, but he knows down the road he's doing something that is wrong, fundamentally wrong, borderline evil, and his response to it is, I don't care, because there is a greater necessity that I am responding to. And I think what I always question with other people writing the character is they seem to have lost sight of the fact that, yes, there is half of him that acts as a samurai, but if you actually look at samurai history, there are a bunch of bad MFs. And he's very much like that. But see, this goes back to my original concept, which is Sabretooth is his father. The reason Sabretooth always came up on his birthday and killed him was because Sabretooth wants him to kill him back. It's not like they're not going to die or anything. They're going to die or anything. They can both get better. But he wants Wolverine to prove to himself that he's just like Sabretooth. And Wolverine won't do it because Wolverine, in that instance, is a 17-year-old kid saying, screw you. But again, this is my vision of the characters, which is fundamentally different from everybody who's come after me. And there's nothing I can do about it. It's not my character. But for me, Wolverine should never be as likable or as simple as a lot of people like to present him. In many ways, he sees himself as a monster because that's what he's done all his life. And to think he can fool you into thinking he's different from that, I don't think he is. And the reason there are people he will respect, like Aurora, because she's proven that she is just as badass and even more terrifying in her own way as he is. He respects power. He respects power that meets him face to face and doesn't back off. But that's complicated, and complicated is or I think it's complicated. That tends to be something that the last 30 years worth of storytellers are not comfortable with.
Yeah, and I've always thought that there's many versions of heroism, and some heroes wear their heroism on their sleeve and lead with their heroism, emanate their heroism. He is a hero, but it's about a deep, unerring moral compass that he doesn't even have to look at or think about. You know, I think that it's some kind of, he just knows what to do and knows what's right and wrong without like leading with that. So I think that it's a primal versus a super articulated heroism. Like Captain America can talk to you all day about how, and articulate his version of heroism. Wolverine just does it.
And
So
that can make people like Captain America very uncomfortable, because there's nothing, Wolverine does what he does, but he does it, again, as a predator. It's not, it gets you to the right goal, it leaves you uncomfortable along the way, because you see what's happening en route. And Cap wants to find ways to do it decently. Wolverine will just pop the claws and start cutting.
And I think if you get into the nuance of vigilantism, you know, there are vigilantes like the Punisher who has his own MO and he's just going to do what he wants. There are other heroes that turn to vigilantism after they've parsed a long conversation with themselves about, you know, every possibility. And it's just different levels of either, is it in your bones that you know what to do? Do you feel like you have to have internal dialogues about what's the right way to do? And so it's the arc of heroism is so complex, and you could do an arc of heroism and know where Wolverine is, where Punisher is, where Daredevil is, where Captain, where Superman is. I mean, Batman, it's childhood pain over and over and over. You know, and so there's like, that's what drives him. So, but that's what makes each character wonderful, because they've each got their own version of how they claim to call themselves heroes.
But then, from a writing standpoint, the flip side of that is, here's Logan, but here's Captain America reacting to Logan. And it's not a comfortable relationship, because Cap has a very specific line of perception and activity, which, quite frankly, Logan isn't interested in. It's not the way he does business. If it's evil, he deals with it. If it's an adversary, he deals with it. Cap has rules. And with Logan, he knows Logan's a good guy, but, and the but is what any writer who's paying attention wants to play with.
And Captain America is institutionalized to a certain degree. He was grown within the government system. He was trained within the government system. So if you want to think of like, you know, how did wolves evolve into dogs? Somewhere along that spectrum, you know, Wolverine's way over in wolfdom, and Cap is somewhere closer to a domesticated beast, you know. So.
And again, the terrifying thing is Kitty's in the middle and she doesn't know which way to go. Because she is, at this point, as equally attracted to both sides. And yet, and again, as a writer, the and yet is where I play. Because it's, for me anyway, it's way cool. And the frustration is, no matter what I come up with, there'll always be another writer down the line who will have a different idea. I mean, I know I'm right, but that's...
There is another, your question back there, you've been waiting. Yeah, go ahead.
I wanted to know what was your opinion on X-23, is specifically on the fact that it's a character that came from a TV show and then now gets incorporated into comics.
I thought she was a movie.
No, she was in X-Men Evolution, the TV show.
I don't
And she
know.
The
was
one
in
where they were all
X-Men.
teenagers.
X-23 is the Wolverine,
The clone,
adolescent
female
Wolverine analog clone, who wasn't satisfied with only having two claws in her hands. She has like two claws in the front of her foot and a claw at the back of her foot, and I have no idea how they make the right angles. And Alan Davis, I think, visually created her in the comics, and she looked cool. And out of my league. No, I'm sorry, it's just, there's some characters you see and you think, this really works, and there are some characters you see and it's just, what? You know, sorry.
That doesn't mean somebody can't come along and make it work.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, one of the fun things in comics is to find someone no one's paying attention to anymore and try to make them work. You know, it's, and often it'll come because everybody's so busy, all the characters are so busy. When I was doing Captain Marvel, I was like, well, can I have this villain? No, he's busy. Can I have this villain? No, no, no. And I was like, well, who's left? And my editor was like, I don't know, everybody's either in the negative land or over here or there. And then I just Googled, like, worst, most forgotten Captain Marvel villains. And Nitro popped up. And I went,
Oh, God.
Nitro? But you know, for me, it was like
Oh, yeah.
a frustrated guy who explodes, cool name. What would he be mad at? He looks like an old guy. You know, what would be, oh, tech. Oh, he wouldn't be able to deal with a cell phone. And so I just went from there. So it's sort of like, it's like when, you know, Frank brought back Stilt Man, or, you know, when people just say, Chris is groaning, but I find that stuff
because
hilarious.
the first story I wrote was with Stilt Man. It was just brilliant.
You know, it's like someone will come along and go, oh, that character no one cares about. I feel it, you know. So you never know with X-23. I don't even know what she looks like.
She's a comic book character. No, but that's the thing. When I started on the X-Men, the only interesting character they had was Magneto. You know, and I said, okay, let's see where we can go with this. And you know, the thing I wanted to do with that was take it to the ultimate surprise conclusion to make him a hero. But again, with Logan, it's like, and yes, I call him Logan because I refuse to call him the Wolverine because I just, But we go through the miniseries, and for me, excellent. We get to the end, and his life has finally, it's coming together. Everything is cool. He's gonna get married in front of the Emperor of Japan. What do you want? And of course, that didn't work out. But that's where you get to find a way to play. I mean, Salva and I did an 10-page story where he and Yukio and Kitty are driving back to Tokyo. It's between the next to last page panels of the Kitty Pryde Wolverine miniseries. And they stop in this town in the middle of nowhere, and they get out, and it's a ramen place. And he walks in, and he starts making ramen for dinner. And everyone's like, wow, Kitty's saying, you're really good. Yeah. Why didn't you tell us? Again, Logan's stock answer, you never asked. Well, it's like none of your business unless you're willing to make the effort. And so he makes this delicious ramen, and she's watching and taking notes as she's helping him, but then she sees on the wall above the stove a line of photographs, and it's 4 generations of mother and child, but the last generation is a wedding photograph of Logan and the first of the family grandmothers, which is 4 generations back. And it is a wedding photo, which means this is his family. Because it's an 8-page story. That's all you know, that's all you get. Figure it out for yourself. And he does ask her, she does ask him, and again, it's none of your damn business. But this is, as I said, this is where, for me, I like to play because there's so much in a person's life, and especially in his life, that you can throw out to the reader. You don't have to have, I mean, he's attacked by a bunch of thugs. So all he's doing is standing there getting hit. Why? Because what are they going to do? Hurt him? He's got adamantium bones, for crying out loud. A healing factor, for crying out loud. They're not going to do anything to him. But at the last panel of the story is he's explaining to them they're going to come back, they're going to clean the restaurant, they're going to behave themselves, they're never going to bother his descendant ever again. Oh, and just to emphasize the point, snicked. That's, for me, that's a Wolverine story. Because it's not about Logan going and slashing up 300 billion people. Any idiot can do that. I mean, any idiot can ask an artist to draw that, and it'll look great depending on the artist. But why not find a different way to make the same point that maybe it's a little bit funny, it's a little bit eloquent, it's a little bit more memorable? Or not, but that's Salva me versus how you see it. But again, I mean, we did another 8-pager where he and Kitty are fighting these superpowered villains who aren't mutants, but they're in a situation where they have no powers. So every time Logan pops his claws, he's doing himself serious damage, and they're getting the dickens beat out of them. But over the course of the story, they figure out how to find a way to win. To me, the challenge is finding a way to win that you don't see coming. It's saving the day without being a traditional person doing what everyone expects. Because from my perspective, A, if you like it, we can do better next time. And B, if you don't like it, it's not that big a deal, and I'll try to do better next time myself. But that, to me, is what he's all about, is finding different ways of doing the same old, but that leave you sitting on the edge of your seat going, huh, what's next? Where'd that come from? How do I figure out where, if we got A to B, what's C, and D, and E?
Another question?
Sure. Oh, one and then two, I guess.
You go ahead.
Right. So it's pretty well known that you like writing subtext in your characters that they're not entirely straight. And
The vet?
Okay.
Some of those are becoming textual now, and some others are in subtext. Right, so for characters like Rachel and Betsy, it's become textual. And for characters like Logan and a couple others, it's
Wait a minute.
become subtextual.
Rachel and Betsy?
Mm-hmm.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
they're
they're
canonically
together.
now.
Oh, for goodness sakes.
Rachel and Betsy. I mean, they're a long-standing, like Mystique and Destiny, of course.
Yeah.
You know, always.
That,
Rachel and
Mystique and
Betsy
Destiny
had-
are so, like, 1970, for God's sakes.
Rachel and Betsy had a full-page, really celebratory spread to celebrate the first time that this was becoming textual.
Oh, for God's sakes. You know, is there no privacy in comics anymore? Do you have to have everything spelled out? It's, okay, you were saying.
I was going to ask your opinions on it, but you've given that.
It's like, the first time I heard that Logan and Scott and Jean were together as a
Yes.
unit, the first thought I had was, okay, who's on top? He only weighs 500 pounds with claws. I mean, I'm sure Scott can deal with that. And I'm sure Jean's just sitting over there going, oh, sweet mystery of life. You know, come on. It's like, forgive me. For youngsters, for those of us who come from an earlier state of reality, this is all stuff that goes A, between the panels, or B, under the phrase, none of your sodding business. It's not,
I would say that at the same time,
Thank you.
At the
That's why
same
she's
time-
the editor and I'm the writer.
At the same time, you know, the old canard, Marvel is the world out your window. The world out our window has changed. Everyone needs to see themselves in a Marvel comic, and that means we have to have queer characters, polyamorous characters, confused characters, you know, we have to have all that. But then, historically, being in the closet was a serious, painful thing. And so if you have two characters, Rachel and Betsy, you're saying, that were, by all understanding, straight for their whole lives, is that true?
No, Rachel, I mean,
But
as was established in Days of Future Past, Rachel was in love with Jeannie.
Oh, okay, so.
No. Rachel was in love with Kate. But Kate was 40 years older than she was. It was a moot point.
I May December.
No, Rachel,
All right, what about Betsy?
Anyway,
She
no,
had-
then she
Betsy
came
had
to our-
partners. Betsy Braddock had,
Never. Oh, except for Doug.
and Warren Worthington III.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, Warren
so-
Worthington III, basically, if it had legs, it was a
So I guess what I'm saying is that you would have to look at the history of the character. Were they in a straight relationship? Were they somehow in the closet within a straight relationship? You'd have to navigate a lot of stuff to get there and get the reader to believe it. So, you know, there's the realistic path that you can take, but you have to do your homework and you have to figure out how to navigate that in a way that, yes, gives queer people representation in comics, but not just by simply switching flicking a switch.
And forgive me, I have no problem with that. The problem I have is things happen and I'm reading this stuff, I have no clue why. And if I have no clue why, then my next question is, why is this happening? I mean, there's got to be a reason. There's got to be a reason that makes me interested in reading the next issue. And just, it's cool, okay, why? You know, and I think it's...
Well, one other thing I want to say is that, and I mean, we were talking about this at dinner last night, that the characters are iconic. They're icons, and you can stretch them in any direction. Any writer can stretch them in any direction. They will snap back to form if they're a solidly iconic, well-grounded character. So that you can have a female Thor, you can have you can do whatever you want. The character is going to revert to the essence of who they are. And we know who Captain America is. We know who Wolverine is. We know who Storm is. You can take Storm on all kinds of adventures, but she's going to come exactly back to her regal essence. You know, so I think that there's that too, that you can fool around with these characters, and the stretching of them uncovers new layers. Whether you believe in them or not, or like the storyline or not, it uncovers new and what we're doing is we are telling 60, 70, 80 stories of the same characters. You're going to have to stretch them. You're going to have to test them. And do they snap back to something beautiful and essential? That's the test of a good character, really.
So Stan's point from the very beginning is you're given these characters for a certain point of time. But then when you're done, you have to put them back on the shelf basically in the condition you got them, so the next writer can start from a fair neutral point and then move on. But if you're going to make any sort of change, let us know why. Find a way to embrace the audience so that we're sitting there going, A, maybe didn't see that coming. B, this is interesting. See what happens next. And if you don't do that or say, I'll explain it down the line, that's not fair, because it's not fair. And you shouldn't do things like that that aren't fair, because you want to get, sorry, we come from the era when the idea was to sell more books every issue. Because we wanted to be, we're greedy, we want to be successful. So, any other, can we?
We can have one more
Yeah,
question.
go
Only
ahead.
one? Oh, the guy in the,
The guys right
the
there,
blue? Oh, okay, sorry.
but maybe two of them, we'll let
Yeah, I have
Yeah.
to say, but he was before me, so.
Okay,
Oh, me?
yeah.
Okay.
Well, first this guy, then you.
Oh, okay.
Circling back to an earlier, what was your opinion of the treatment after the Wolverine, after the events and Fatal Attractions, where that is adamantium sucked out in 1993, for the rest of the plot line through the 90s, where they explore his more feral side?
I had a detailed pitch in 1991, where I said Wolverine gets grabbed by the hand, he's turned into the master assassin of the hand, he goes crazy, he starts killing X-Men, and yada, 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 yada. And it was rejected because it messed up the plot structure for Wolverine. Imagine my surprise 3 years later when that pretty much exact same story suddenly popped up. You know, it's like, my mistake was turning in a story and not saying it's my copyright, but it, quite frankly, I didn't read it because why should I read someone writing my story not as well as I think I should?
but what, the story was that they took Wolverine's bones out?
They took his bones out, yeah.
Feral afterwards.
So
for a while.
in essence, despite the fact that Chris came up with the story first, and it sounds like it sat around in a drawer and somebody pulled it out and said, yeah, I'll do this. The notion of making a hero vulnerable has always been a good one. That's why Superman has kryptonite. You know, and then the idea of exploring the nature of what they used to call his berserker rage, right? You know, his berserker rage, you know. So, you know, and that, as it gets back to the wolf to dog continuum, where does he fall on the feral line is anthropologically an interesting question. And so I think that all this stuff is valid if you do a good story. And even if it isn't a good story, it adds another wrinkle to something someone might come along and explore later, because that's what we're all doing. We're all looking for new angles on these characters we write, not just for ourselves, but for the fans to think about, and then for future writers to maybe have fun with. So,
And quite frankly, the thing that I found insane was, okay, he dies, he gets resurrected. Oh, but after he gets resurrected, then Forge comes in and pours the adamantium back into his skeleton, so he has adamantium claws and adamantium bones. Oh yes, and when we resurrect Karma, we cut off her right leg and make it bionic. It's like, this made no sense to me. So it's like, okay, not my department, have a good time, I'll just, okay. So it's like, okay, what can I say? It's like, well, that pretty much sums it up. And,
all right, are they
and
throwing
there's
us
one
out?
guy in the blue,
Right, the guy that's been waiting.
but make it quick.
So one of my favorite Wolverine stories is Old Man Logan, and there's a lot of modern tellings of Wolverine towards the tail end of his life, where he kind of retreats into this old man like hermit type of state, which is a little off from the mentor that he currently is now. And I always wonder if you feel like that's a natural progression for his character. I
That's
hope
a
I
good
worded that
question.
right.
No, because I have, it's my concept of Logan is totally antithetical to that, so.
Oh.
I've never looked, I've
Never
never
mind.
cared. It's like, sorry, if you love it, muscle tough.
I mean, I guess I get back to my point where it's not our sandbox. The toys in
Yeah.
the sandbox are someone else's IP. People can do whatever they want, and I always find even failed experiments with narratives interesting because it just gives us all more to play with. But it was a good question. I wish I could have answered it.
And if it's a great idea, someone new will swipe it down the line and maybe come up with a better story.